first and foremost, our hope has to be in Jesus Christ. But secondly, we do live in this world. We are creatures of this world, and we do have to abide by the laws of this world. And one of them is money is a very real thing. And I was always raised in the belief of the money is the root of all evil. Well, the love of money is the root of all evil. I believe the fear of money is just as great as the love of money, because either way you're allowing money to control your life.
I wrote The Bible and Bitcoin for you, Bible-believing Christian, and in it I lay out the biblical basis for what money is, why our current fiat monetary system is ungodly, and how Bitcoin is the best and most viable, biblically compliant replacement for government fiat money. There's even a small group study guide in the back with additional resources to study with your church small group. Get it on Amazon or pay with Bitcoin at thebibleandbitcoin.com for a discount. Welcome to another episode of the Bible and Bitcoin podcast. I am your host, Alan Armstrong, aka Pastor Coin, and on today's episode we're talking with Vince, also known as the Bit Native. Vince, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, looking forward to discussing all things Bitcoin and the Bible, and maybe a little bit of what you're doing as well. I hear you do like some Bitcoin art and things like that. I'm not artistic, but I like art, if that makes any sense.
Fair enough. I would have said the same thing about myself earlier this year until I got into a little bit of artwork myself.
Honestly, well, maybe there's hope for me then.
Oh yeah, God led me into some artwork. Not something I ever delved into before in my life.
Good stuff. Okay, so Bitcoin and the Bible, I see on your Twitter that you put up there, I don't remember when, but that you started to accumulate Bitcoin or put in buy orders or something around 16K. Is this accurate?
Ooh, yeah, that was back in 2022 when we took that dump down,
So that's when you really started DCAing or what?
That was my first dollar cost average. Before that, it was just lump sums at different times. Definitely committed the cardinal sin of buying altcoins, but I've since turned from my ways.
You've repented from your alt ways.
Oh yeah.
Good. Well, I think we've all been there. I started with some altcoins as well, and thank God didn't get rug pulled or anything before I learned the correct way. But here we are. So, all things considered, that's a great entry point for dollar cost averaging in the Bitcoin, as it turned out, because it was the bottom, and you've done quite well for yourself in terms of that. So I wanted to ask you about this idea of biblical stewardship and Bitcoin. How does Bitcoin, in your mind, let me ask it this way. How do you see Bitcoin in terms of stewardship? Because some Christians would say it's volatile, it's risky, while others would say, no, it's the most, it's the best stewardship you could do. How do you navigate that tension with Christianity and the Bible and this idea of stewarding your resources?
I'd say that volatility is probably the number one thing that scares people away. I'd say when it comes to stewardship and in the Bible, look at any of the biblical figures that held a flock of animals. Jacob, his descendants, all holding flocks of animals. Very volatile. To prey, to drought, to the grazing grounds, to theft, to robbery. It's not something that you'd buy a flock of sheep and expect to return the next day. It's very much the delay of gratification, the time preference. You have to invest in your flock. You have to be a long-term holder and allow your flock to grow. So I think that is probably one of the best places to look when it comes to a biblical sense of Bible. And it was a form of currency. You said it in your book or other podcasts. Abraham had flocks. He had It lists all of his flocks, all the different animals, he goats and she goats, and it was good. That was a form of currency. That was a way to store wealth.
So, how would you respond to a Christian who might say, well, isn't it just safer if I hold cash? Um, it seems like Bitcoin might be too risky. What's your answer to that objection? The risk objection.
Well, we've seen it on and heard it on many podcasts before, and all the Bitcoin speakers speak of it, and it's kind of now we've come to the realization that holding cash, in the last few generations, we've come to this realization that holding cash is not good enough. You have to play the stock market. You have to find a good investor. Um, I remember when I was young and started making good money working in the Canadian oil field, and I sat down with a personal investor at the local credit union, and she laid out the plan of what my return would be on however many dollars a month I can set aside. And I just looked at that and I saw inflation where it was, and there is no way you are retiring in this country or even getting a good return on your money by just putting it into a medium risk savings plan.
Mm-hmm.
So as a Christian, you gotta give your head a shake when you see that you have to gamble on stocks and be worried about what CEOs are saying or doing. You should be able to just store your time and energy that you've worked for in a common currency and be able to pull it out at a future date and spend it. So holding cash just is not a viable option for anyone, let alone Christians, to store their time and energy.
What is your take on the current situation going on in Canada specifically? I mean, to a lesser extent, it's happening in America, maybe to a slower extent, I could say, not lesser. But in terms of Canada, what's your take on the current monetary situation? Because from my vantage point, it looks like people are talking about a looming recession. If this, if this isn't currently a recession, I don't. I would hate to see what this so-called looming recession. It feels like we've been in a recession. What's your take?
We're most definitely in a recession. Um, I try to talk to a few small business owners here, and there's not a single time that you talk with someone where they aren't addressing or bringing up the inflation, their the cost of labor, the cost of goods, and how much they shrink portion sizes at a restaurant or product sizes in production versus raising the price on them. We're most definitely in a recession. Um, look at the stats that are coming out about employment. It was something like 25% or more of all employment in the last year has been government employment. I forget the exact
Yeah,
number,
it's
but
it's very high. It's high.
it there's no there's no sector of our economy other than government that is growing.
That's not a good thing because how is that being funded? How is
Yeah,
the
well,
private or the public sector funded? It has to be the private, right? Or is there something I'm missing here?
I think it's all inflation at this point. They can't collect enough taxes to pay for the bill that's coming due through the public sector.
So what does that equal? I mean, from your vantage point, when does this thing I don't want to say collapse, but when does it collapse?
Well, I don't know. We've been kicking this can down the road for a couple generations now, and the it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. This when does it collapse? Who knows?
Does
It,
the
it's,
incoming presidency of Mr. Donald Trump, is this a good thing for Canada long term? Or, I mean, maybe the question is, should we just become a 51st state? Is that is that a short term way out of this collapse?
well, I think that's just another can kicked down the road. We'd be joining the It'd be, I'd say it'd probably be better for some Canadians short term, but we're all ending up at the same place. Any economy,
Yeah.
any country that's just trying to print its way out of a recession is ending up at the same place.
It feels like taking off a really dirty shirt just to put on a slightly less dirty shirt.
Yeah, yeah, that's that's one way to put it. I don't know, especially with the American dollar being so much stronger than ours, and we import most refined goods, most of
Hmm.
our clothing, shoes, a lot of our food, especially in the winter time. A lot of our food is coming from the United States. All of our fresh vegetables and fruit. Um, Honestly, if it wasn't for Bitcoin, I'd be pretty. I think I'd be a lot less hopeful if it wasn't for my own holdings of Bitcoin. Put it that way.
That's pretty interesting because like I said, most Christians view Bitcoin as a speculative, risky, volatile. Like I was talking to a pastor friend of mine a couple weeks ago, and when I told him that, most of my net worth is in Bitcoin, he was shocked. He was shocked and appalled. Like he was like, "Most of it? Are you crazy?" So for you to say something like, if it wasn't for Bitcoin, I wouldn't really be so hopeful for the future. Elaborate a little bit more on that. Why? Because most Christians will look at us and you in saying that and think, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's well, I don't know so much from the Christian perspective. I've never really thought of that from the Christian perspective. I've always thought it more of a hopeful, just in a very monetary and a very fiscal way. But as a Christian, first and foremost, our hope has to be in Jesus Christ. And but secondly, we do live in this world. We are creatures of this world, and we do have to abide by the laws of this world. And one of them is money is a very real thing. And I was always raised in the belief of the money is the root of all evil. Well, the love of money is the root of all evil. I believe the fear of money is just as great as the love of money because either way you're allowing money to control your life. So as far as hopefulness comes into it, you don't have to jump on that hamster wheel. You can take your foot off the gas a little bit. You can spend more time um, creating a family, investing in your family, investing in your faith. You don't have to always be working. You don't have to have a dual income household anymore. We can return to that lifestyle of our grandparents or great grandparents where it was a one family income. They had a house, they had a car, they had vacation, they had uh, a good Christian life and a good community life. So much of our community, like all of my family and friends, we've all worked out of town oil field. And yeah, it's good for the bank account and can help you get set up, but it destroys your personal life. It is soul sucking work.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of Bitcoiners as of late. Um, just the time and freedom it has opened up for them. One brother at my church who is a Bitcoiner. It seems like most of them are now, thank God. But he works in the mining sector, not Bitcoin mining, like
Mhm.
physical mining of physical resources. Um, and he's just taken 3 months off, and people at his job can't comprehend that. They're like, dude, how can you take 3 months off? Everyone's worried about shutdowns and layoffs, and he's like, okay, I'm taking 3 months off. It's like, how can you do that? It's because he doesn't have the stress anymore. He has the Bitcoin, he saved in Bitcoin, and now it's like while everyone else is stressing about layoffs, it's nothing for him. He has that to fall back on, and he can take a quarter of the year off without it affecting his finances. So that um, element of freedom, you can't put a price on that. You cannot put a price on that. And when it comes to the future of Bitcoin, let me get your vision for where you think this thing is going. You have really maybe two sides of the same coin here. One side is the utopia side, which says Bitcoin's going to fix everything and the world's going to be perfect. The other side is the doomers who say this is leading to a technocratic tyranny where the government's going to own you digitally. Where do you see this thing playing out, and how do you see this thing playing out in, say, the next 20 years?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I don't know. You go far enough down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, and you can see there are, I don't want to say red flags, but I'm worried that Bitcoin will go far past the peer-to-peer cashless system. It will become a international means of trade settlement, and it'll be too big for the average person to use. That's my biggest fear when uh, when transaction fees are so high. If game theory plays out and every nation state is using it for global settlement, is the average person going to be able to get Bitcoin and use it? Layer two, maybe, um, but no. In the long run, Bitcoin will fix a lot of these problems we see in the world of government overspending, forever wars, um, the pharmaceutical industrial complex, military industrial complex, agricultural industrial complex. It will defund all these things if game theory plays out. Hopefully.
That's the hope. Obviously, we've seen Big Pharma do a number on the world, Canada especially. It would be nice to see Bitcoin defund that, but time will tell. What do you think about? So one of my big things is um, that I think technology can obsolete much of what the government does. If you separate the state from the money, then basically you kneecap the power of the state. They really, because the only business the government is in the money business. If you take them out of the money business, then it just becomes a free market of services that you choose from. How does this play out with Christian theology, which a lot of I think people wrongly believe that the Bible says that the state is this thing that must always exist. But how do you view Bitcoin separating money and state from a Christian perspective, especially taxation? The Bible and Bitcoin podcast is sponsored by Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is a Bitcoin only exchange. It's non custodial, so you don't have to trust them with your Bitcoin. It's feature rich and always improving. They have a Christian CEO and are an all around amazing place to get your Bitcoin. To get started, go to bitcoinwell.com/pastorcoin and start stacking today.
I haven't looked too much into how it separates us from taxation, but as a Christian, we're all in, well, especially Canada, we're sitting in a country that is one of the top three, if not the worst in the world for abortions, our complete abandonment of all moral values. Just we've entered the stage of complete and utter moral depravity in Canada, and I don't know how much the rest of the world sees that in Canada, but living in Canada, you feel it. It's very oppressive. Um, the school system, the medical system. So as a Christian, if you just by holding Canadian dollars, you're funding this. Um, it's no longer a matter of, oh, what can we do as Christians? You're so entrenched in the system. It's so many friends are thinking of leaving the country for a better jurisdiction. I say that, well, that's not the only solution. I think you can stay here if you just withdraw your money from the system. And I don't think voting is ever getting us out of this system in Canada now. I think we're too far. There's no Christian party. There's no Christian representation left in Canada. On your podcast this week with the Swiss gentleman there, the member of parliament, they have a Christian representation in parliament, but Canada, I really don't think there is. And so as a Christian, I think the only way to separate that money in state is to actually become a Bitcoiner and take your money out of that system. Because the longer you hold money in that system and the more money you hold in Canadian dollars, the more inflation that they can inflict on the populace. So the moment you're out, what are your thoughts on it? What do you think of the state of Canada and how Christians are able to live a moral life once they realize the money problem?
That's the a million sat question, I think. Um, it's an interesting thing because you can exit the system. You can be all in on Bitcoin. But that's just a drop in the bucket, right? I mean, everyone's got to do it for it to really take effect. And it's very discouraging to see the current political landscape. A guy like Pierre Poilievre that was so pro Bitcoin back in 2021 totally just went radio silent on it ever since. Ever since the bear market, he's just been radio silence, and it's so discouraging. It's like, I even met the guy. I tried to give him one of these sweaters. He wouldn't even take the sweater, man. He's like, no, I can't touch that. If the liberals see that, they're going to whatever. I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys are such cowards. You have no conviction. You have no principles, you know? There's no conviction. There's no principle. It's just whatever's popular at the time. And Bitcoin's popular now, and he's still not talking about it. So you're right in your assessment that we can't vote our way out of this. Evidently, you can't, because the options are growing increasingly worse. I mean, it doesn't get much worse than Justin Trudeau, but like a Pierre Poilievre prime minister or administration or whatever is not going to really be that much better, relatively speaking.
Well, look at
Maybe a little bit.
their
Sorry?
platforms. Their platforms are almost identical, other than
Oh,
after the
yeah.
tax. Pierre Poilievre is the exact same as Justin Trudeau. He's a career politician. He's never held the job outside of politics in his life. It's just really discouraging that that's our conservative option in Canada. The UN agreements, the WEF agreements, the all of it, they're a uniparty. Like, we need a disruptive party to break up this uniparty in Canada, and we just don't have it yet.
Yeah, it was really weird for me to see or Jugmeat, I guess that he pronounces it. I say Jug, whatever. Big Juggy over there, wanted to eliminate the GST permanently, and I'm thinking, wow, I thought you were a socialist. What do you mean you want to eliminate GST? So I said, cool, let's do it. Anytime the government says we want to eliminate a tax, I don't care who's proposing it. Yes. So he proposes this, and then the conservatives vote against it. And I'm like, what? I thought you guys were conservatives. I thought you guys were axe the tax. It's like, well, no, it's only axe the tax that Trudeau is famous for, right? It's not about axing taxes. It's about attacking Justin Trudeau, gaining political power. It's not really about freedom or liberty in this country. And so, to answer your question, I think the only way we can turn it around here in this country, I think it's really it's one strategy, but I break it into two I guess subsections. The strategy is turn to Christ, pretty much. Turn to Christ and obey him. And I think the most strategic and best ways we do that in this country is in two ways. Number one, we have to have families and we have to disciple those families in Christ. We can't offshore the education of our children to the states. We can't participate in their system in any way. And number two, we have to exit the money system. It's almost like we're building our own country from within. This is how I see it. It's exiting that system while we're on the land still. And over, it might even take one generation if enough of us do this. It will just push out the old, and this new, better thing will emerge. That's how I see it, at least. I don't know. What do you think?
I 100% agree. But I think the big problem there is, yeah, a lot of these good Christian families I know and friends, they're exiting the system, but it comes with a huge financial burden
Yes.
of exiting that system. And that's where I try to tell people this is where Bitcoin comes in. You've separated yourself from the state's medical system. You've separated yourself from the state's education system. Now is time to separate yourself from the state's financial system.
Yeah.
The government can't educate properly. They can't medicate or do healthcare properly. They can't even fix our highways properly. What makes you think that they're the best stewards of our money? And we come right back to Christians the majority of Christians I know do not want to talk about money. Money is still a taboo, and
Yeah.
it's just not something you address. You go to work, you collect your paycheck, you let the government take their 30-40% off the top, and you make ends meet with what's left, and God will provide. Yes, but God also will reward the good steward who took his talents and got a return on them. Whether that's
Mhm.
your faith, whether that's your skills, whether that's it's your time and energy. And if you go and you use your skills for good a trade or a good profession that's building up this country, building up your fellow brothers and sisters, building up your community, and then you let the government waste it through inflation, that is burying your talent underneath the rock.
Mhm.
And it's just it's so frustrating that we can't just trust in a in a good medium of exchange and a good store of value in this country, and we have to re-educate our entire country, the entire world, on on a better monetary system. What is Bitcoin? It's just better money. It's all it is at the end of the day. All it is better money, but it's a big hurdle. I it's probably the biggest hurdle.
Yeah. Christians used to be known for um, work ethic, for commerce and business, for healthcare, for charity. All this stuff was pretty much invented by Christianity, right? Like the modern healthcare system did not come out of an atheistic worldview. It wasn't like a bunch of pagans sitting around one day thinking, "Oh, how can we love our neighbor? How can we heal them?" That wasn't the case. It was actually, as a matter of fact, the profession of nursing was explicitly invented by a Christian because she was a Christian and wanted to nurse people back to health. So everything good from what in Western civilization, capitalism, healthcare, education, um, science, even all the stuff that is good was propelled forward out of a Christian worldview, and Christians took the initiative and the leadership in those areas. And so we need to do that again. We need to take the initiative in business, in healthcare, in education, in charity. Like the welfare state should not exist. Charity should come from the church, from Christians helping the poor. That was the mandate of Jesus Christ. And that's what Christians did for millennia, and it worked tremendously. The poor got the help they needed. They not only got the physical help they needed, but they got the spiritual help that they needed at the same time. So it has to be more multifaceted, right? Than just we start churches and we teach the gospel and it ends there. No, it has to be we take over the whole culture. And leading in business includes now, it has to, money, the actual money, not just business, not just production of stuff, which is good, and we should do those things, but we have to reform the money. And I think the next big reformation is not going to be a theological reformation, because theologically, people might have, denominations might have their differences, but theologically, we pretty much figured it out, right? There's not much that needs to be reformed there, but I think the next big reformation comes in the money, and I think that's where Bitcoin plays a big role in that. What's your assessment on that?
Oh,
Do you think
100%.
Bitcoin is the reformation that we need now, or am I missing something?
I like the word renaissance. It's a
Yeah.
renaissance. You've been on Scott Dietl's podcast, and he recently gave a great talk at adopting Bitcoin in El Salvador, and it was phenomenal. Of just this will create the new renaissance. What happened to our architecture? What happened to our beautiful public parks and fountains and churches? They were all built with such beauty, and it showed the faith of the culture. It showed the generosity. These were a lot of these things were not state funded. It was patron funded,
Yeah.
and I think it's going to take a few more epics, a few more Bitcoin epics before we get there. But patrons will start coming. Um, I saw it in El Salvador. I was honored and to be able to be part of the art gallery there. And there are patrons of the artwork now. There are people who see beautiful artwork and are willing to part with their hard stacked sats to support artists. And as the number goes up in Bitcoin, patrons will go up. People will want to live in a more beautiful society. People will want to see better public spaces. People will want to see less homelessness. And we obviously cannot rely on the government for it. It has to be out of those core tenets of Christianity, the Good Samaritan, you know, give more than you're receiving, give back to society. It's hard to ask Christians to tithe now because they're already losing, like I said, 30-40% here in Canada off the top of their paycheck. And
Yeah.
that's supporting the welfare state, which used to be people used to be able to take care of all of that by giving 10% between the church and the poor.
Right.
And and now you're already down almost half of your income, plus inflation, plus sales tax and everything in Canada here. And then you're asked as a Christian to give more, that there's not much left to give for most Christians. And they know that their taxes are paying for the welfare state to begin with. So, on both sides of that, yeah, there's a renaissance coming. You say reformation, I say renaissance, in that we will see a resurgence of the arts, of of Christian charity, and of faith through Bitcoin.
Yep. Yep. I like that word, Renaissance. It's a little more clean than Reformation. It sounds more like beautiful. Reformations can be ugly and there's lots of disagreement and arguments, but a Renaissance just sounds like very smooth, nice transition to something a lot better than what we currently have.
And I think it's important for Bitcoiners in their local communities to find the good businesses, to find the good entrepreneurs and orange pill them. It's hard. You have fun staying poor is a common thing in Bitcoin, but it will not be fun to be at the top and be lonely. If your town goes to crap, it's not going to be fun to be a Bitcoiner there.
Mm,
Where are you gonna spend your Bitcoin? Find those good businesses, tell them about Bitcoin so that one, they aren't going out of business, and two, their prices will come down over time. I
yeah.
recently orange pilled a local coffee shop. Like he's now accepting Lightning as of I think today, pretty much. And yeah, just business by business, slowly making progress. I'm starting a meetup in my hometown starting next month, next year, and it's going to be what is Bitcoin? That's my theme of just small business owners and local people can come and find out what is Bitcoin. This could be the solution to that constantly tighter and tighter margin on your business, on your
Yeah.
on your household budget. Like it will be lonely to be a Christian Bitcoiner. That's all I can say. It's already lonely. If more people are not getting ahead of nation states, it will become more lonely for Christian Bitcoiners and Bitcoiners in general.
Yeah. Or we'll just all flee to El Salvador and start our commune and our little cult together there.
For us Canadians, it's a little bit too humid down there for me. A little bit too hot.
You've been there, right? You mentioned?
Yeah, I was down there and adopting Bitcoin, so that was 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and it was 32 degrees and 98% humidity. And
Ouch.
yeah, I mean, I'm out in BC, and it gets up to it's a dry 30, high 30s in the summer, but not the humidity.
Yeah, the
Not the
humidity is what kills you. I'm in southern Ontario and it gets humid.
Okay,
And
yeah,
it's like that humidity that almost suffocates you. You know, you can't breathe outside because feels like you're drinking the air into your
yeah,
lungs.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not fun. It's not fun at all. BC just sounds crisp, you know, just like a Aquafina commercial or something with
yeah. That's
the
expensive out here.
glaciers.
It's expensive out here, but beautiful. Mountains, rivers, lakes. It's
Why is
crap.
the beautiful places always so expensive? I went to California for Pacific Bitcoin. In
Okay.
California, I gotta give it to California. Weather-wise, perfect. Who would not want to live in a place like California with that weather? But it's such a leftist, cesspool. Why are the beautiful places always so messed up?
Uh, I don't know. We elect communists. Yeah,
I
we do.
guess it's hard to be depressed when it's so beautiful out, right? So you can deal with a little communism, and at least you can go into the mountains and get away for a minute or something. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's really only Vancouver, Victoria that are the communist faction of the province. But just like all of Canada goes to where Toronto and Montreal vote, all of BC falls where Vancouver and Victoria vote. So,
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about your art. I'm interested to hear about what you're doing with Bitcoin and art.
um, trying. I don't know. Came a lot of it was inspired by God. All of it was inspired by God, and I'm just looking for different ways to bring both the arts back and God back with the arts. Modern art is an abomination, and it only started when fiat money came about. It's pretty much started at the same time in the arts. It was 1913 is when modern art really started coming out of the woodwork, and that also happened to be the same year that the Federal Reserve was created. So I think it's a funny coincidence, but just trying to contribute something, just trying to contribute more back, use subdue the earth like God told us to, and by that I mean to use the resources that God's put here to make things beautiful, interesting. Um, Art will bring more people to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin will bring more people to art, and the two go hand in hand. And my works are very small works, but I can see that there will be gradually larger projects, especially in El Salvador. It looks like El Salvador is looking for good artists and good engineers to build to rebuild their country. And so I'd say in the next 20 years will be a really interesting study case will be El Salvador to see how Bitcoin creates a renaissance in architecture there, um, street art, art galas. Um, God and art are God's the ultimate artist. Look at nature. You just have to drive through the mountains or see any beautiful scenery, and you realize that God is the ultimate artist, and humans have just been trying to replicate what God created. And so with Bitcoin, one, it's allowing people to have the time, and two, the money necessary to patronize good works of art. Look at these cathedrals that were built in Europe. They take centuries, 600 years, 700 years for a single church. And their money was gold through the whole time. The cost didn't go up with these buildings. So it was a lot easier to build something when you had a sound monetary system. If you wanted to build a church today, the likes of one of those, you'd start off with a certain budget, and within the first year or two, your budget would be blown out of the water because of
Yep.
inflation. You just couldn't do it. Well, if you set that money aside within Bitcoin at the beginning of a project, you'd never run out of money ever. You'd finish that project and you'd have enough to start another project.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another criticism would be that why are you wasting money on cathedrals? That's not being a good steward of your money. Well, I think that attitude comes out of the fiat system because it's like you're almost trained to spend right away, because saving doesn't make sense. And so, when you have a hard money system, beauty and a longer time preference can finally make sense to the average person, because they see, hey, yeah, I'm saving for the future now too, and so it would make sense that we would build cathedrals or churches that last long. And that, most churches now just look like public schools, right? It's concrete walls, it's classrooms, and it's a bunch of chairs with a sound system.
Yeah,
But I'm really into Christian art lately, and going back, my latest book, Render to God here. I
I
don't know
know.
if you
I'll,
if you
I'll have
checked
to
it
buy it.
out,
I was
but it's
looking.
filled it's filled with art. Like, I just got really into Christian art. I don't know if I can show you, but almost on every page there's like some artwork that depicts sort of
Mm,
the story being told and stuff. And so, like, it's time that we revive that, because what better art is there than religious art? I mean, all the classics are religious pieces of artwork. So, definitely a fan of what you're doing. I don't know if you've posted. I haven't seen you really post any art, but if you have, link me up to that. And other than that, where can people find you?
I'm only on X really. I tried Noster, but I think I lost my I Noster has is a little bit of a learning hurdle. Um, I got a new phone and I lost my access to my account, but I only had one post on there to begin with. But I'm a bit native on X at Vince Peltier 2, I believe, and that's where I post everything. Working on some more pieces going forward, and yeah, hope to present it at more conferences in the future, possibly even a Canadian Bitcoin conference if I can get it done in time.
Yeah, yeah. Let's get you hooked up with those guys. I was at the conference this year. It was great. I think they had some art, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, there was one guy who was there that did like clouds,
Okay.
like cloud art. It was kind of cool. He like had like the blockchain in like this cloud thing. It was like
Okay.
it was really cool. I don't quite remember exactly how it worked, but all I remember was clouds and blockchain and just these cool artworks with like clouds integrating Bitcoin and stuff. So
There,
they're definitely open to having art. So let's get you
there's some
hooked up.
excellent Canadian Bitcoin artists making some beautiful art, just leaps and bounds better than anything I can do. So
Yeah, I'll get you the info, and we'll get you there this year for sure if you're open to it.
yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Okay, Vince, thank you so much for coming on the Bible and Bitcoin podcast. It's been great talking to you. And until next time, everybody, grace and peace.
Thanks, Alan.
Your family, your nation, and your world needs strong men. The devil wants men weak, emasculated, and addicted to porn. This is why I designed the Slaying the Beast course to help men take back the dominion porn stole from them. This course will help you discover your identity as God's image, how porn leverages and twists that against you, and how with God's help you can turn the tables on the beast and live free. There's also access to a Discord server where you can have fellowship with others in the fight. You do not have to wait any longer to conquer this beast once and for all. Go to lifegiverchurch.net to get started today.